You know that feeling when you finally finish entering all your hours or all your miles or all your detention and all that stuff? You double check the numbers and you hit submit payroll. You hit send it to us or to whoever you're sending it to. It finally feels like you can breathe again, like the hard part's over. But here's the truth. The moment you hit that button, on our side, the real work begins. Most trucking company owners don't have any idea how much is happening behind the scenes to make sure their drivers get paid right and taxes stay compliant. Today, we're pulling back the curtain and walking you through what actually happens when you hit submit payroll. The validations, the bank transfers, the payroll filings, the reconciliations, taxes, all the things that protect your business and your drivers. This is Driven for Success, the podcast for trucking company owners who want to run a smarter, more profitable business without getting buried in the back office chaos. I'm your host, Mike Ritzema, founder of Superior Trucking Payroll Service, where we help fleets save money, pay drivers correctly, and stay compliant so you can focus on growing your business. We start with the question of the week. Today's question is, why do I have to submit payroll before Friday if Friday's payday? It's a great question, and the answer is simpler than you think. It's because the banking system needs time to move money. Uh, Direct deposits don't happen instantly, even though Zelle does and all these other things. By the way, I was just at a payroll conference and we were talking about that. We'd love it to move instantly, believe me. But once your payroll file is sent, files move through the ACH network, which is the automated clearinghouse, which is a fancy word for saying direct deposit, and it can take 24 to 48 hours. So if you submit your payroll on Friday, the drivers generally won't get paid on Friday unless we have to do a special favor for you. The banks won't release the funds until the next day. So that's why your driver needs it, or that's why your payroll provider needs it early. It gives them time to validate it and get it sent through the banking system and give the banks time to do the job, which runs right into our topic for today, conveniently enough, because I picked the questions of, what all happens. Before we start, I want to say that what I'm talking about, some of the times I'm going to talk about some of the things we do, and I'm going to talk about some of the things that generally every payroll provider does. I'm going to try and tell you which ones are which. For the most part, assume that every payroll provider does the things, unless I say we specifically do it. And if I say that we specifically do it, that doesn't mean that they don't. You just might want to ask. It's not about telling you that we do all these things better. It's just, every company has a different way of doing things, right? So that's where I'm coming from. This is not to say that anybody else is doing it wrong. It's just there's different approaches sometimes. So with that in mind, let's start with what happens the moment that you send out your payroll, hit submit, however you do it. Right away, everything goes into like a validation process. If you're sending it through a portal, it might be something where they're making sure that everything makes sense somehow, uh, checking the details and things like that. For us, if you send it to us, almost pretty much everybody emails it to us or something like that, and we'll look at it. We'll put human eyes on it because it's really easy to, if it's an Excel sheet, for example, instead of 2,500 miles, you put 25,000 miles. It's just an extra zero. Sometimes the keys get sticky. Happens. And sometimes you're really busy because you got to get payroll done so you can get 20 other things done and you missed it because you're human, right? So we're looking for that stuff. We're looking for negative miles. You pay somebody negative 2,500 miles by mistake, we're going to find that stuff. Everybody's going to go through and find out, look at your gross to net, make sure it makes sense. We're going to look for negative paychecks, which can happen a number of ways. We're going to look for negative taxes too. You can actually have negative taxes almost on your check in a way. You really can't, but you're not supposed to. But if you had someone with pre-tax deductions for, say, health insurance, and they had missed a few weeks, and you wanted to make it all up, and they had $700 in deductions for health insurance that were all pre-tax, Section 125 plan, and they only had 500 in payroll wages that week, they're going to have negative tax because you're going to figure out FICA that way, or they could if they actually just said, oh, the amount of pay times the Social Security and Medicare tax rates, but the pay was negative for taxable. So anyway, we'll look for that stuff. Everybody else looks for that stuff too. We're not unique that way. Making sure that the garnishments get paid properly, things like that. Validating and verifying routing numbers, account numbers, all that kind of stuff. These things I just talked about, we're able to get a bunch of the problems out of the way right there. Our goal, and I'm sure everybody else's goal too, that does payroll, is we want to solve the problem before it's a problem because it's much easier to clean up before we finish it, before we actually process the payroll. For our clients, a lot of clients like to get a preview from us, and we'll send them a preview. Here's what your payroll is going to look like, so you can look at it too, because we're not. I mean, we know what reasonable and unreasonable is, but we don't know that you accidentally paid John Smith instead of Jim Smith. How would we know? And so you want to look at that too. But that again, the whole point of all of that, before we post it, or whatever your payroll provider tells you how they finish it, whatever they call it, it's so much easier. We can fix everything right there. Nothing's done yet. It's kind of like, think about doing your income tax return and you haven't filed it yet, and you're like, oh, I forgot that I got $100 in interest. I got to put that on there. Well, nothing got broken. You just changed your return a little bit. No big deal. Then you file it correctly the first time. And that's what we're trying to do. And that's why, again, every payroll provider, I'm not going to tell you we're the only ones who care about that. If you don't think your payroll provider cares about that, you've got the wrong payroll provider, but I bet that's almost nobody. So you keep that in mind. So those are the things we try and fix before we even finish the payroll. When I finish, meaning that batch for that week is processed. And then we go into the banking things, the direct deposits and the funding. Every payroll service does this a little differently. So I'm going to try and speak generically, but we all end up at the same place. So, we all have to make generally NACHA files. NACHA is in the ACH we were talking about in the question of the week, the automated clearinghouse. That's the middle three letters of NACHA, and then it's National Automated Clearinghouse Association. They are, they're the direct deposit police. So we got to make sure that we can make a file in the specifications they want. Almost every bank requires it. Some banks have a little different thing, but we still have to make a file for the bank, no matter what it is, to get it to be accepted. And then we have to submit it to the bank or however they transmit ACH transactions. Then the bank has to verify it on their side. They're going to check the routing numbers again to make sure, generally, to make sure that everything's okay. There's rules for routing numbers, and there's only a finite number of them, and you want to make sure that's right. And then they release it on their time for the schedule that they have. They don't send it out instantly. They don't, like, if I send them a deposit, here, send $100 to this person, just because, to make up a small number. They'll be like, okay, we'll send it, and it'll go out with our next batch, which goes out 3 or 4 times a day. And even then, it's still that just means it's going from them to the Federal Reserve Bank. From there, it has to go from the Federal Reserve Bank to the intended receiver's bank, and then their intended receiver's bank has to take that batch and process it and get it to the person. And we usually put an effective date on it for the payday. That's how we do it. Some banks, if they process it early, this is how you get those. You'll see it in your bank a little early. Some banks, if they get it early, will show it as pending. They don't have to, and it's up to them what they do. I don't worry about what the driver's bank does. But there's all that whole process, and they're always working to make it faster. We're always hoping to make it faster, but it does take time. It also requires us all to kind of be careful, which is good, because we don't want to pay anybody wrong. And again, every payroll service is that way. None of us want to pay anybody wrong. So, we all have our different ways of getting there. So this is why sending your payroll in early isn't just a suggestion. It's what really makes sure that your drivers get paid on time. Both of these first two things, talking about what we do before we finish the payroll, and then this part, the more time that we have to do it as a payroll processor, well, again, us or anybody, the more time that we have, the more time we can do the first steps, which is making sure it's accurate, and the more time the bank has to make sure your drivers get the funding they're supposed to get. I think it just helps. Now, I know it's not always easy to send it to us early, and I get that. You've got PODs you're waiting for and things like that. That's a different fight for a different day. Well, okay, so now we went gross to net, and we set up all your garnishments, did all that stuff, and we got the banking out. So your drivers got their net pay direct deposited into their account. We're done, right? Good episode. No, we're not done. We're halfway done. Now we got all the rest of it. Well, we collected some tax money from you, or we're going to collect tax money from you, depending on who the client is. But generally, we're going to collect that tax money. We gotta pay it for you. You're not just giving it to us as a tip. So we have to make sure that not only do we pay it for you, but we pay it on time, and we pay it to the right agency for the right account, which would be your account, and for the right tax period. And there's sometimes other things too, but using 941s, for example, a quick summary of what a 941 is that's the federal withholding tax and the Social Security tax and Medicare withheld from the employee and the match from the employer. That's really what it boils down to. It's those things. If you've got more than 3 or 4 employees, you're probably going to be what they call a semi-weekly depositor, which means we've got to get that money. If your payday's Friday, you have to get that money to the IRS by Wednesday. They got to have it in their hot little hands, as my mom would always say, on Tuesday or on Wednesday. So it takes time to do all these things. As we were talking about with the direct deposit, you got to kind of set some of this stuff up early. The, the banking stuff is or the 941 payments are similar that way. You don't want to just do it on the Wednesday. You got to make sure it's right, and you got to have a good system in place to make sure that that gets done. And the same thing applies to state withholding, local withholding, unemployment, all that kind of stuff. The intervals are different. Like you may not have to pay it every week. Though some you do. We have clients that have weekly withholding for state income tax. So you have to make sure that that works out. And then, so that part's fun enough, right? You build a system, it should work. How do you know it works? You got to reconcile it, which means at the end of the quarter, okay, for example, we have a client and they work with us and they have only people in Texas, and they had, we collected $300 in state unemployment for Texas in the quarter. Now we have to go remit it. We have to file the return and we have to remit it. We have to make sure that we pay the $300 that we collected, or if for some reason we short collected, we have to get the money from the client. If we over collected, we have to refund it to the client. It's not our money. There's nothing in it for us. We want to give it back to you. So other payroll services do it a little differently. Some of them will file it and have it come out of your account. There's other ways to do it again, but the ultimate process is the same. We want to make sure that every payroll service wants to make sure that your what they collect from you for unemployment is what gets paid to unemployment. What they collect for state withholding for Kentucky gets paid to Kentucky. Things like that, because it's just a mess if you don't do that. We're working towards everything's working towards your W-2s. You've got, we got to get those W-2s done. They don't do themselves. So, it all works towards that. These 941s that we were talking about, those 941 deposits, every quarter we have to send in a 941 tax form, reconciling all this stuff to the IRS so the IRS can see the work and say it's all good. They don't know how much we collected from you. They just know how much was paid. So we also have to reconcile to you as well, of saying, we got to look at it and make sure that we're all even up there. But, if you make mistakes on this, 3 months later, you get a letter. And sometimes the mistake is on the IRS's side, but sometimes it's on ours. So, we really, much like we were talking about in the beginning with the payroll process of trying to fix things before you post it, man, we want everything right before we have to file that return. Because if we get that done all right before we file the return, we don't get letters. You don't get letters. And that's really what we want. So, yeah, it's just better to reconcile beforehand. We do that for our W-2s. I can tell you, because I'm the one who prints the W-2s here, and I'm the only one who's ever printed them, because I'm going to make sure that everything adds up, and I won't print them until they add up, because you can't ignore that problem. It will become a problem later. I promise you it will. So now we've done all these things. We got all the tax filings and payments done. We got all that kind of stuff done. Now there's reports and reconciliations or adjustments or any of that kind of stuff that we got to do. We want to make sure we talked about comparing the tax liability to the tax payments. We got to send you reports. You're going to want reports in some fashion, whether we send them through an email or share file, or if you get them through a portal and you get them there. However it works out, right? Like there's lots of ways to get there. We got to get you reports. We got to get you whatever you need specifically. If you need an IIF file for QuickBooks, we want to get that to you. And again, most payroll services do that. If you need a 401k file uploaded, we have all the data. I know for us, and again, I can't speak for everybody, but we'll upload your 401k file for you because we got everything. If we have all the stuff, there's no reason not to do it. Or if you're getting workers' comp through the vendor that we recommend, we just file it for you so that you don't have to worry about it. But all that stuff happens. It's all got to happen. Again, I think other payroll services may do the same thing. You just want to ask them. But we gotta reconcile everything. We got to make sure all the employee records are updated. Things like, again, we're towards the end of the year, so we're starting to get address changes for people that quit in March, which is good, by the way, for the drivers. If you're watching this, drivers, and you moved, make sure you tell all the trucking companies you work for this year that you moved so your W-2s can get to you. Everybody thanks you, including anybody in your house when you have to file the tax return. These are all things that all happen after the fact, just to get you the reports. These are all week to week, month to month things that happen. A great payroll provider doesn't just run payroll. They balance everything. They make sure that they can get you whatever you need. And also, they need like the ongoing things that happen. Uh, a payroll provider really doesn't disappear after payday, or at least they shouldn't. Like, they're still around. They're still helping with things like if a direct deposit gets rejected, your employee gave you a bad number. They accidentally wrote down, instead of a prepaid debit card, they wrote down their Visa number. We look for those, by the way, but you can't catch everything everywhere all the time. Or they marked it as checking instead of savings, things like that. So we have to get back with you and follow up with those and make sure that you're to help you pay your employees and say, hey, Mary didn't get her $300 that she wanted to go into that special account. It got returned to us. What do you want us to do with it? And sometimes we send it back to the client. We'll do whatever the client directs. They send it back to the client. We'll wait to get a new account number and send it out to her. Things like that. We got all the maintenance stuff too that we got to do. Dealing with, like, making sure our security's still good. It's kind of like the maintenance on the truck, right? It takes some time and some money when you can't do it during the load as much. So when the truck's home and the driver's taking his break, you fix the truck, and we do the same things here. We're monitoring, looking for rejected tax files. If something went wrong, for example, you weren't properly registered for EFTPS, which is the Electronic Federal Tax Payment System. It's the way you have to pay your taxes for the payroll taxes for the IRS. If you weren't registered right, it gets rejected. And so then we go through and figure that out for you. It doesn't happen often, but it does happen. Or if you've got a special request, we get those a lot, where you forgot to pay somebody, we need to help you fix it. Or you've got somebody who needs their last 4 pay stubs but didn't sign up for our pay stub portal. We will get those for you. Or my liability audit is coming up and they want to see this and this and this from payroll. All right, we'll get it for you. Everybody's different too. If it was universal, you'd already have it from us. Things like that. It just happens during the week. So you might not see all this work that we do, but you do feel it. It's fewer surprises, fewer fires fires we can put out for you. And everybody starts to build up the trust because everything just goes like clockwork. I've seen this with other jobs too, and I know it's self-serving in a way, like for the industry, not just for us. But I think that we do make a hard job look really easy, and I think that's true. I think truck drivers do that too, by the way. Uh, they just go down. You're there, just going down the highway, la 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 la, going through Nebraska, and I'm thinking, people think, I don't think this. People think this. That's a really easy job, man. They make all that money for just on a highway that never turns. Well, that's all well and good until the truck breaks down or the load shifts, or you've got to go deliver in a city in narrow streets like in anywhere out east. So it's easy when it is, but it's harder than people that don't do it think it is. So, with all that, when you know what's happening after you hit submit payroll, you stop thinking about payroll as a black box that just takes an input and makes an output. You start understanding how many more moving parts exist to protect your business from tax notices and drivers not getting paid. It's not just about paying people. It's about compliance and timing and systems and banking and taxes and accuracy and all these things. So the next time that you send your payroll in, you'll know exactly what happens behind the curtain and why it matters. If your current payroll provider hasn't earned trust behind the scenes, or if you want to know more about trucking payroll and what we do at every step of the process, reach out to us at Superior Trucking Payroll Service. We're here to help. Uh, and if you've got a great solution, that's awesome. Stay with it. We think that's great. But we're not looking to upset the apple cart. If you've got it working, keep it on working. You got other things to worry about. Next week, we're going to talk about some things that I've learned from serving the hundreds of trucking companies that we have. And it's the patterns and the habits and the common themes that separate the successful carriers from the struggling ones. Or in this time with the economy having been so bad, it's the struggling ones from the ones that couldn't make it. So I think it's going to be a really helpful episode, and hopefully it helps you make better decisions. Till then, keep on trucking and